welcome everyone to today's session. We're delighted to welcome today Lorraine Lee, who's going to be in conversation with Kate Brewer. Lorraine is the General Counsel of Assistance Services Worldwide and is also the Chief Privacy Officer at International SOS. I think we're going to be talking about roles today, and you've already got many roles even in your work context, Lorraine, so I'm sure it'll be interesting to hear more around that and your boundaries that you're setting. And Kate is Denton's Global Inclusion and Diversity Officer and leads our WOW Women of the World Legal program, of which this is an example of the type of sessions that we run within our overall client experience program. So we're delighted to welcome everyone today and really looking forward to hearing the conversation that's going to happen now between Kate and Lorraine. Kate, over to you.
Thank you so much, Judith, and thank you, Lorraine, for being with us. Just to kick us off, to enhance accessibility for attendees at all of our meetings, it is our standard practice to enable the live transcription function. If you would like to enable that function, please just press the CC button on the menu at the bottom of your screen. You can then enable or disable the service in your personal feed. And please note that the transcription uses AI technology, so it's not always perfect. So please bear with us if there are inaccuracies along the way. Thanks again, everyone, for participating in this session. As Judith mentioned, I'm Denton's Global Inclusion and Diversity Officer. I am based in Toronto, Canada, so I'm coming to you today very, very early in my morning, but I know it's going to be worth it. We've also enabled the chat for this session, so we would love to hear from you as we go. I know Judith has already put a request out there for anyone to please share with us where you're joining us from. But as we're moving through the discussion today, we'd really like to hear from you, your thoughts, your comments, your observations, your ideas, and also any questions that you have along the way. We have saved some time at the end for Q&A, but we also like to pick up questions from time to time during the chat, particularly if there's something in the flow of the conversation that intrigues you. And we'll try to make sure that we get all of those great questions to Lorraine as we go through the day. Just a little bit of background of where we are in the WOW program. This is our 11th WOW webinar and the second in our In Conversation With series, which are designed around in-depth conversations with inspiring women leaders like Lorraine. And I know that all of you will be inspired, all of us will be inspired by Lorraine as we speak this early morning for me. And it's terrific to add Lorraine to the group of distinguished guests that we've been privileged to have join us in our WOW sessions over now almost 2.5 years that we've been running WOW. So again, delighted to have you with us, Lorraine. We're going to, as part of the discussion today, get into more details of Lorraine's career story as we tackle this topic around empathetic leadership and healthy boundaries at work. Just a very, very brief bio, and then we're going to put you to work a little bit with the poll, but a brief bio. Lorraine is General Counsel, Assistance Services Worldwide, and Chief Privacy Officer at International SOS. She has extensive experience both in-house and also working in private practice in Singapore. She was with Wong Partnership, Raja and Tan, Capel Corporation, Hilton Hotels, and now International SOS for the last 14 years. So a long and storied career. She is a transactional lawyer by training, but I think as many of us will appreciate, her career has touched many different aspects of the law, particularly in in-house roles and in her role as General Counsel and now Chief Privacy Officer. She has a passion for technology, and she has a passion for contributing beyond the typical work responsibilities. She was the co-chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Council at International SOS until recently. I'm sure we'll be talking a little bit about that. She has many interests outside of her day-to-day work, and I know we'll be talking about that. So as we get underway, and I'm seeing some great attendances from all over the world here, as we get underway, I'm going to actually ask Judith if she will kick us off with a little poll for all of you. So Judith, over to you.
Thank you, Kate, and hi everyone again. So we're going to run a few polls throughout today's session. I can see people are jumping on it already, which is great to see. So the first question we want to get your opinions on is whether you talk openly about burnout in your workplace. So the question is, we talk openly about burnout in my workplace. Is that a yes? Is it a no? Is it in some contexts, but not all, like in safe spaces or in close relationships, you talk about it, but it's not generally spoken of? Let's get your views on this. So it'd be great if you could all vote. We're at 70% now, so just a few of you left to vote. So press those buttons. Okay, I'm going to give it 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Great, I'm going to end the poll and share the results with you. So it's quite split, isn't it? Pretty equally amongst today's audience between yes, no, and in some contexts, but not all. So it clearly, there isn't sort of one size that fits all in terms of the general trend around the openness of conversations around burnout. And I think I'm looking forward, Kate, perhaps you want to pick up on this theme with Lorraine at some point during the discussion today.
Thanks so much, Judith, and thanks to all of you for voting, and we will definitely get to this discussion. But before we dive in, I gave a little bit of a teaser about Lorraine and who Lorraine is. Lorraine, I would love to talk to you a little bit about that, your career path to where you are now and your current role. But when we got together to prepare, we started way back at the beginning. We just had a discussion about your early formative years because it really mattered in your narrative. I'm just going to throw it open to you and say, can you tell us a little bit about your background and your path to where you are now?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Kate. And hi, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here and really excited to share ideas. Kate and I did a quick run through. It was so exciting, so inspiring to have these conversations, and really happy to be here. So I'll start from right at the beginning. I'm born in Singapore, Singaporean. Spent a few years in the UK as a child in the north of England, in Manchester, between the age of 6 to 9. So basically, my mother went as a music student, and I tagged along and started formal education in Manchester, which was quite a culture shock because my parents were bilingual, but we spoke Mandarin at home. So she had to equip me with key phrases for survival in school, like may I go to the restroom, things like that, and a real culture shock. I was the only ethnically Chinese child in the entire school. There were other Asians, mainly South Asians from Pakistan, but definitely the only ethnically Chinese person in the school, and that everybody I came across had ever met. So, pretty challenging start to school life. At 6, there was a bullying incident, not very pleasant, but I did the best I could at age 6. And fast forward, to age 9, my mother finished her studies and came home. And so at this point, I had eclectic parents. So my mother decided that, you missed out on the Mandarin and the Chinese, and your English is pretty good now. So I'm going to put you in a Chinese first language school, which was another culture shock. So yeah, that's how I started. So I stayed in Singapore for the rest of my school up to high school, and then went to the UK again for law school at the University of Kent.
So I love this. I don't know if I love, maybe that's not the right word, but the story of a double culture shock at a very early age, really fascinating. Did you always know that you would go back to the UK for your university education? Do you think you would have made that choice had you not had that early time in your life where you'd been exposed or you'd spent time in the UK?
Yeah, it's kind of like a very familiar. There's whenever I go back to the UK, there's the smell of summer that I remember. So it is like a second home, and I was very happy in Manchester after the first initial culture shock. Yeah, I don't think I thought much about where I would end up with at university, but I think having chosen law as a degree to pursue, there were only a few choices: stay in Singapore or go to the UK. It wasn't so common in those days to go to Australia, but it's more common now. But any of the Commonwealth jurisdictions.
Excellent. And so you did your degree in the UK, but then you returned almost immediately to Singapore for work. Was that always in the plan? Or I know it's always funny to ask people what was in the plan, and often this, I was 21 or 22 years old. There was no plan.
That's
I was
right.
just
That's
sort
right.
of going
There
with
was
the
no
flow.
plan. The plan was I did the in the UK you either qualify as a barrister or as a solicitor, and I went the barrister route, and so I'm a barrister at law of the Middle Temple, and that's the short route, because for solicitors you have to do the whole training and it takes years. And you need to find a law firm that would take you. So it was the faster route. And then I came back to Singapore. I was called to the Singapore bar as well. And I think it was just reality at the time that when I finished the bar, it was 1993, and the UK was in recession, 92 and 93, and home students weren't getting jobs. And it was the start of the EC at that time, not even European Union yet. And so, it was pretty much Europe focused. Students who spoke multiple European languages, were getting jobs. And at the same time, back in Singapore, the economy was booming, very much booming. So it just made sense to come back and start my career here.
Excellent. And so actually this is interesting, because when we first spoke, I hadn't appreciated that you'd qualified as a barrister, because of course you have you really have had much more transactional focus in parts of
That's
your
right.
career. But
Yeah.
So you mentioned you came back to Singapore. Did you start right up, in more of the transactional side of the work? Tell us a little bit about that part of your
Sure.
experience.
Yeah, I think as you said, I was 21. I was thankful to have passed the bar. I wasn't expecting to pass the bar first time up, because the pass rate was 30% in the UK, and then suddenly I passed and I found myself back. So it was a bit of a shock. No planning there. And there wasn't much choice there either. You got a training contract, and you were thankful you got a training contract, and you're sort of allocated to different departments. So yeah, I think there was a trend at that time to take more of the Singapore National University graduates to do litigation work, because they were already really familiar with civil procedure, and all that, and to take graduates who were not from Singapore to do transactional work. But there was a real mix, and it depends on the needs of the firm at that time. So there I started. So I started doing real estate, and then moved on to doing corporate finance, capital markets, joint ventures, M&A type work. Yeah, and then that sort of took its own path. So there wasn't any time where you could switch back to doing, okay, now I want to do litigation.
I mean, you obviously you spent some years doing that, and then ultimately decided to make the move to an in-house role. Can you talk us through a little bit about what prompted that that decision and that change? It sounds like you were smashing it in your career, doing really, really well, but you did decide to make the change. What was the impetus for that?
Yeah, and I think the perspective for I think most of us here and in the audience have gone through that grueling law firm practice days where you start as a trainee, and then you're a year one associate, year two, year three, and at no time did I feel like I was smashing it. Right, it was sort of the first few years. It's between trying not to make a fatal career limiting mistake and doing what you do, and I think at the time just before I left, it was the .com boom. So really every man and his dog was putting a .com at the end and trying to list on a dubious PE. So and I was working 80, 85 hours a week, really great colleagues. We had a great time in the office, but that's all we did. We just worked to a point where you can't see your screen because your eyes are so fatigued that you have to go home, and then the next day it starts. So it was a real grind, and I thought, well, I really should try something different. I tried many things. I fantasized about many things. I thought, I'm going to be a travel writer. So apart from working till 1 a.m. in the morning, I was also doing travel articles and trying to build up a portfolio in that, right? And there comes a point where reality sets in, because when you do something you're passionate about, and it's simplistic to think, oh, I'm passionate about traveling, this is going to be a cushy job. And then there's that hotel that you can't think of anything nice to say about, and you need these sponsorships, and then and then you think, well, if I do this, I'll have to compromise, and that's hard to do. So yeah, I think the first in-house role for any lawyer going from practice to in-house is always challenging. You're expected to know everything. And the business folks in the company don't understand when you say, well, I'm not an IP expert. It's like, well, you're a lawyer, give us an answer. So I think that first job was really important to shape, how I thought about problems, and how, the business people don't want a 5-page legal opinion. They just want to know, can I do it? Can I not do it? What is the solution? And that's really shaped, how I interact with my business stakeholders at work today. It's about finding solutions, not saying, well, the law says you can't do this, so, tough.
I really love that, Lorraine, because I was hearkening back to our poll and burnout, and I was thinking about you with your juggling, not spending 80 hours a week trying not to make a fatal mistake. And I have to tell you, I can identify with that early career. I'm pretty sure that there's, anyone who's had an early career practice experience appreciates that. But 80 hours a week trying not to make a fatal mistake, and then in the in your spare time, try to get this career up and running as potentially as a travel
That's
writer.
right. I was trying to get out.
Something else to do. So, I think we hear that, similar stories, different elements from certainly we have during WOW from a lot of our guests. You've talked a little bit about it as, wanting to try something different. Is there anything more you can share about, the actual, the experience? Because this is quite, particularly in the era, it's quite common now for people to start in private practice and then make a transition into in-house. But the time you were doing it, which was 20 plus, almost 20 years ago, around 20 years ago now,
Yeah,
it was
20
still
years
quite
ago.
an unusual path.
Yeah.
So risky, maybe a bit risky. Can you, share what, were there other things going on that made you think, I really, really need to make this change?
Yeah, not so much what was going on other than 80 hours that wasn't quite sustainable. It's also reaching a point, because when you're a year one associate, you can't see the forest for the trees, right? You're just trying not to make that fatal mistake, and trying to survive to year two and to year three. And at some point, you can see all the way to the top, and you think, well, I thought I don't want a life like this, and also it's about role models, right? Not seeing any role models that I aspired to become, right? And I think different strokes for different folks, right? I think going in-house is not the answer for everyone. I have friends who have gone in-house and gone running back to practice because it's a safe space for them, and they like the work. The career progression is known and is certain. You're a fee earner and not support, right? And when you move in-house, you are support because you're not the one bringing in the business. Sales is. And I think if anyone's contemplating an in-house move, I think there should be a great emphasis on due diligence of the company and the culture, because in private practice, you can sort of give the advice and say, well, you take that advice, which is perfect, and go run with it, right? But in-house, you have to live and breathe that every day. So does it align with your values? And it's exciting for me. It's exciting to see how the business is run, how I can partner with the business stakeholders.
Thanks for that. And I just wanted to pick up on something you said about, looking at the top of the hill and looking for role models and not really seeing the life that you want. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of role models, how it shaped you as a leader and your perspective? And I think you've talked a little bit about how it influenced your decisions about your own career, but whichever aspects, it would be great to hear from you about that importance of role modeling.
Yeah, sure. And it's talked about a lot that women don't really have many role models in senior positions, because if you look and you say, well, this is what I'm working at, what do I become, right? What does that look like in 10 years time? And you see somebody completely different from yourself, whether it's gender or ethnicity or background, then there's always the question of then can I be that person? So for me, that took that took years. I think one positive role model I had was at Hilton, where the group general counsel was female, and she was the only one that, you know, I looked at and thought, okay, you know, so one day I could be like her. You know, and in terms of lifestyle, I definitely didn't want to compromise my health, family, sacrifice relationships or friendships, you know, because I had to work 80 hours a week, even, you know, at the top of the hill. And also it's about, you know, looking at people who are different from yourself, and then being comfortable and saying, well, I'm not going to be like this person. This style works for this person, but it's not going to work for me. And I'm going to have my own style of leadership, and, you know, my own values, and my own path.
You know, I love that, Lorraine. One of the things that you know, I've been reflecting on as we've been talking, not just now, but, you know, over the course of WOW and certainly over the years, is that because of great leaders like you, that world of role models is changing. We have, you know, the world in which you and I grew up, because we're pretty much contemporaries. That was, I think, very, very true, that there was a real lack of role models for people for women, for people from, you know, underrepresented backgrounds. There's still much to do, but I think with great leaders like you, that's really, really changing. I think it's, you know, you mentioned the general counsel at Hilton, because that you did make that change and spent some time at Hilton. Was that part of the inspiration to make a change, or, you know, was it primarily other factors, and that was just a happy coincidence that was a general counsel?
Yeah, so no, it wasn't, because at the time when I joined Hilton, Hilton was actually split into two organizations. There was Hilton International for the rest of the world, and Hilton Hotels Corporation in the US. And they shared the brand, but operated completely separately, and which is not known to a lot of people outside the hospitality industry. And the part of Hilton that I joined was Hilton International outside the US. And that wasn't very diverse when I joined in those days. And it was only after Hilton International and Hilton Hotels Corporation came back together and operated at once as one, that I got to meet the group general counsel, you know, in the US headquarters. And it was an inspiring moment, but no, that wasn't what drove me to join. You know, it's very attractive, I think, to many people, and very exciting and shiny to join a hospitality company. You know, you can really get swept up in that world of shiny hotels and brand standards, and, you know, the whole decorating and coming together of the hotel and how to operate it, and there's a whole culture around it. So, you know, I was drawn to the shininess of it, right? And it was really enjoyable. Very undiverse, very male-dominated industry, hospitality was, and many you know, meetings where apart from the PA who was setting it up, I was the only female. Many occasions.
I was wondering whether or not you were thinking you were going to, you know, scratch that that travel writer itch through your Hilton role.
It was really extensive traveling. And I think, you know, it's yeah, it was a great experience, a great time of my life to be doing that. Absolutely.
So you know, you mentioned a little bit, and we'll get into, I think, the meat of some of the conversation around this, around you know, your style of leadership and so on. And when you and I were speaking together, I think we talked a little bit about you know, how you value being yourself. We did our little burnout poll at the beginning, and you know, really that sense of needing to create that space in the context of really creating a sustainable career. So do you want to just talk a little bit about you know, the idea of setting boundaries, and then what I'm going to do is ask Judith to engage with our audience a little bit for another poll, but maybe I can just ask you to comment about the boundary setting as we get underway in this part of the conversation.
Yeah, sure. And I think it's hard. It's work in progress for everyone. And the kind of boundaries I set are the timing of calls, right? Because in a global role, you know, you could technically work 24/7, and especially in the work that we do at International SOS, we help other companies take care of their employees in health and security matters. So in my part of the business, we have 27 assistance centers that run 24/7. So it's a real 24/7 culture anyway. And added to that, there are real crises in the world. So, for example, this year, at the start of this year, I had just stepped into my new role as Chief Privacy Officer of the organization. So I thought, well, I'm going to really focus the next few months on building the team, structuring how that's going to look like. And then the Russia-Ukraine conflict, right? So we were drawn into a real life crisis, which really was 24/7. And so when things come in at me, and they're always urgent, I have to take a step back and look at, okay, how urgent is it and who is it urgent for? Right. And so I respond immediately. And what I've done is I have forced myself to do those quadrants that you know, that you put things in, where is it urgent and important? Is it urgent only but not important? Is it important, you know, long term, or it's stuff that I can delegate? And I don't enjoy doing that. You know, if I look deep inside, my preference would be to flow with the day. But you know, it's a discipline to do that so that I know what I have time and energy for, and what really has to go. And I draw those boundaries about evening calls, right? So my US colleagues, for example, wake up really early and start their day really early culturally. So they're trying to accommodate me by planning a 7 or 7:30 p.m. call, thinking that that's good for me, but it's not good for me. That's my family dinner time. So we do what we do in our family, and we all land at 7:30 every day, and we have dinner together. It might be 30 minutes together, but you know, we're all present and we're all there. And then, you know, somebody will have an 8 p.m. call, somebody will have this, you know, and we all disperse. But that's sort of my block out time. So I will go back to my US colleagues and say, can we do 9 p.m. my time? Or I state, you know, and if we're planning a call and I say, these are the days and these are the times that work for me. And they'll come back and say, well, that's really late for you. would you not prefer a 7 p.m.? So, so I'm really open about what I'm doing in the evening and what my preferences are. And I do feel that if it's my evening, I can choose the slots. And you know, the requests will come in, and if I look at the last 3 weeks, 2 weeks ago, I had evening calls on 4 nights. Last week, I had evening calls on 2 nights. This week, I have 3 nights. So it's about, you know, moving them so that it doesn't become 5 nights. And I just declined a call on for Friday, 9 p.m., right? So it's about doing that. And then also not just saying no, but offering solutions to say, well, I can't make Friday, 9 p.m., but I can do this, send this by email beforehand, and if you want to chat through, then, you know, I don't think I need to be on that call. So these are the sorts of things that I do, and it's a real, it's really tricky, right? Moving the jigsaw puzzles around, and everybody's busy trying to find a slot, and if Friday evening looks free, then, you know, it will land there. The other things I do is, you know, make sure I have enough sunlight. So I start the day having breakfast on my balcony, make sure that I have sunlight. I walk out at lunchtime, make sure I have sunlight. And it's strange to say that in Singapore, where it's you know, sunny all the time, but if you're indoors looking at your screen, you're not getting the sunlight. Also, I go downstairs in the evening, 6:30 to 7, and just sit, right? Not scrolling my phone. I'm not reading. I'm not doing anything, and I just sit and watch the sunset or watch the clouds, and that has been really, really powerful. I think the first few times I did it, I actually fell asleep. And I think that showed me how exhausted I was, burnt out, because if you sit and rest for any moment and then you just fall asleep, that, you know, that shows. So I do that. I don't manage every day, but it's something I try to do, and it really helps.
I love that, Lorraine. I feel like I need to come and hang out with you a little bit, yeah. and absorb some of you know, this great energy. I've got a couple of questions that I'm parking, because I think if we could do a quick pause, and we're going to go to our audience with a poll, and then I'll come back.
Thanks, Kate. So picking up on the whole challenges around setting boundaries and then actually keeping to them. So you might have your ideas around what your boundaries should be, but what's the challenge in actually keeping to them? Do you find it's your stakeholders, your sort of clients, if you like, internally, and their demands that make it really hard for you to say no to the 9 o'clock call or the Friday night, because the pressure is on for you to be present? Is it the leadership working styles and preferences? Do you have a CFO or a COO or a CEO that has that sort of always on approach and wants the team to reflect the same? Or do you find the boundaries are hard to keep because you've got not the right team, or you're short staffed at the moment, so there's a resourcing challenge, or you're trying to support team members having better work-life blends, and that is causing pressure on you having to pick up some of that? Or is it around the crises that we keep facing? Lorraine shared about the Russia-Ukraine situation and how that sort of suddenly came out of nowhere. I mean, no one was expecting the pandemic. So we've gone from crises to crises in many respects. Is that challenging you in terms of your boundaries? Or is it the culture of your organization? It's just simply that everybody is expected to be working and always on and available when needed? Or is it something else completely? If you think it's something else, then please select other, but also if you could put it in the chat so we can see what you think it is, that would be really, really helpful. So I'll just give it a few more moments. It'd be great if you haven't yet voted. 72% of you have, but if you haven't, it'd be great to get your view now. So do click on the buzzer and on the buttons and let us know what you think. Okay, gonna give it 5 more seconds. So if you want to do a last minute vote, oh yeah, you do. There's a couple of you have just gone for last minute press. Okay, I'm going to then end the poll and share the results with everybody. Okay, so let's have a look at this. So the highest percentage in terms of where do the challenges come from keeping to your boundaries is with the leadership working styles and preferences, which is really interesting, isn't it, in terms of the tone set from the top. And maybe that's something else, Lorraine, you'd give your views on how you try to set the tone for others that work for you around that. Because sometimes, especially when you're in a team, it's very hard if the boss, if you like, has that always on attitude. So 56% reference that challenge. And then the next most popular of the boundary challenges is around the stakeholder and client demands and that need to be responsive. So I'm sure many can relate to that. And then the team and resourcing challenges and the cultural expectation to always be on are equally ranked. Kate and Lorraine, back to you.
Excellent. Thanks, Judith, and thanks to all of you. You couldn't have done it better for us. Sort of writing the arc of this conversation, and you pointed right to certainly a question that I had parked in anticipation of the continuation of the conversation with Lorraine, and really that question was around how do we manage those leaders that I'm sure each of us has encountered who may resist, or there may be a sense that they're resisting our need to set some boundaries, or maybe if we're more junior in our career and we feel like we have, less ability to create that space around us. Do you have suggestions about that? Judith also mentioned it would be great to hear from you, around how do you try to approach things as a leader to make sure that you're creating the environment where people can be open about that need for those boundaries.
Yeah, sure. I think I'll start with, demands from the leadership. I think definitely the poll pointed that way. And I have similar challenges. I think, that the leadership work very, very hard. And also, expect that. So an example would be in July and August this year, I had a couple of long haul trips, which looked challenging to start off with. And then my manager suggested that maybe you don't have to come back. Maybe you could fly from the US straight to London, in one shot and save the ticket. And I said, no, I really don't think that works for me. So, and sometimes it takes me a while and I need to take it back. So I think what I've learned is that if in the moment something feels really wrong, and I feel that my immediate feedback wouldn't come out sounding right, I take a pause, right? I say, let me think about that. Let me consider that, or, I need to sleep on it. And then when I do come back, I have formulated it in a way that I think is more diplomatic, rather than you're crazy, I'm already doing these 2 trips. How can you possibly ask me to do that, right? So that's one thing I do. And I think the other question as to what I do with my team is that I start by sharing what I do. So I start by sharing the breaks I take and what works for me, and to say, everybody's different, and you do what you do. I'm not a clock watcher. I don't watch what time you come into the office. And I think also that different personalities, different motivations in the team always, right? Like if you speak to managers, it doesn't always work. There might be team members who aren't meeting those targets. So it's a delicate balance. I think as a leader and as a manager, we can't be everything to our team. So definitely we can't be manager pushing for targets plus a mentor plus a therapist plus a friend, right? It all gets too mixed up, and then there will be disappointment on either side. But there is space to recognize when somebody might be suffering, and to point out that, hey, you look a bit stressed. Are you talking to someone? Do you have somebody to go to? Would you like to take a break? And sort of suggest that there are options, and also to share, right? To say, I have people to help me in different facets of my life. I work with a voice dialogue coach, and which is different, and then you get into a dialogue about, well, what is voice dialogue? Well, Halstone and Sidgerstone, two psychologists, put this together, how it has helped me. That might not be the thing for you, but be open to other forms of help. And then, I think team members can see that, well, it's normal, right, to need help, to feel stressed, and to reach out for help from others.
I really love that you mentioned your role as a leader and calibrating what that is and what your responsibility is to your team, and the things you can and cannot be, and that line, because I think that's also boundary setting as a leader. We can be friendly, or you said you can't always be the type of friend necessarily with people in your team that you might be to with your best friend who you go on that walk with in the evening to watch the sunset. And so I really like that. You also talked about making sure though that you are checking in to keep your team in good I'll say well-being shape. Is there something that have you had experiences? Why don't I go this way? Have you had experiences where you felt as an employee, and you shared one example of your long haul trip, but where you've really had to push back on those bosses? We saw the group talk about the leadership style to really recalibrate their thinking around how they were managing you. I'm just are there tips that that you could share, little nuggets for your audience? I mean, maybe we've probably all been in a situation where we have the impenetrable boss, but I don't believe most people are impenetrable. But are there tips you could share from a leader's perspective about how you would like your reports to kind of approach you, if maybe, and I'm sure, Lorraine, it doesn't happen, but very often, but we all get there, if maybe there's a moment where you haven't seen that perhaps somebody's being pushed a little harder than they're comfortable with?
Yeah, so many avenues, so many little streams where we could go down, Kate, and talk for another hour. Yeah, that's great. I think it is indeed an ongoing challenge and mission, right, to keep that door open. so there are times when team members might not feel comfortable to come with a problem directly, but somebody else feels comfortable to speak up on behalf of that team member, or or from somebody else's team. So, and I think that is also great, because the person who then gave feedback was comfortable enough to do that, and to say, what do I do about it, or what do we do about it? I think it's we can only go so far, right? Even between friends, or even family members, if you think somebody needs help, but needs a coach, needs a therapist, you can't force them to see a coach, and you can't force them to see a therapist, or sometimes even a doctor, right? So I think one of the boundaries is also to accept that we're all adults and we're all responsible for our own lives, our own health, our own journey, and that's probably all I can do to suggest, to say, I am here if you want to talk, and we do have resources in the company. There are employee support options available. There are coaches you can leverage, and if some people are not ready at that moment of their lives.
Thanks, Lorraine. And this always happens to us. We just have a few minutes left. I'm going to invite, in case there are any questions. I know I've asked a million of them, but if there are any questions from our listeners, they can pop them in the chat. And absent that, I think we might run one more poll, but we'll give people a second just in case they have something in the chat. And don't be confused, because what I'm going to do is actually suggest, Judith, that we maybe run poll 4 if we run one more poll, but I'll just give people a moment. Any chat questions? All right, so Judith, should we run our last poll number 4?
Well, this is a really quick poll, so it's not too hard, I think, to consider all these options, because there's only 3 options for you on this one: yes, no, or sometimes. So this comes down to whether your leaders and your colleagues in your organization anticipate and respect your responsibilities outside work. So they don't put in the meeting at 7:30 when they know that's when you try and have family time, that they anticipate that that's going to be a difficult slot for you, and that you really feel that sense of understanding and awareness of your needs. So that's something that we thought we would finish with a question on. So please do share your answers, and you have done very quickly. So I'm going to end this poll and share the results. So it's again quite split between everybody, in terms of 50% saying sometimes, and I probably think that's the most honest that anyone can be, that every time you try with your team to accommodate everybody's needs, but there's always somebody that has a different challenge at a different time in the day, and it can be really hard to meet everyone's needs simultaneously. So I guess that's what the sometimes reflects. And then the all out no's suggests that there might be some challenges there in the culture and the team that you're within. And great that 25% of you do feel that level of support. That's really great that that is there in the workplace. So thanks everybody for sharing and participating in the polls today.
Perfect. Kate? Thank you, Judith. Thank you very much. I will vote, because I can't vote because I am a host. I'll vote. I feel yes. I'd answer yes in my organization, and I think that's a great privilege, I think, for any of us. But I'm going to guess, Lorraine, you'd say no. It should be more than a privilege. It should just be how we all work together.
Indeed, but it's it's hard to consider you know, every single aspect and every single person. So I think we do have the responsibility to speak up as well and to form that relationship, right, with our managers and our stakeholders.
It's terrific, and thank you, and you know, as always happens, and as you said, Lorraine, we could go on for another hour. You and I didn't even get to some of the subjects that we thought we might touch on, but I would like to say, well, we have about a minute and a half, so if somebody's got a burning question they've suddenly thought of, please put it into the chat. But other than that, I would just like to say thank you very, very much, Lorraine, for sharing with us. I am going to stop by for breakfast on the balcony, and maybe maybe a sunset on the bench. I know I've just invited myself to your house, but you know, that's what we do here at WOW Sessions. It really has been a terrific conversation, and we're really grateful to you for your time and for joining us, and for taking the time in what we know is an incredibly jumping from hopefully, thank you for putting us in whichever quadrant in the box you put us in today, because we're super, we're really
important box.
Excellent,
important conversations. And thank you
Fantastic.
so much for having me, Kate, Judith, Joanne, and everybody on this call. It's been a real pleasure, and please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. I'm quite active there. You know, many important topics, you know, to discuss on that forum as well. So thank you again.
Well, thank you, and we will definitely. I'm sure Lorraine call on you again, and thank you for your generosity in offering to be connected with folks. I'm sure they will take you up on it. And back to you, Judith. Anything we should or our group should know as you take us out?
Thank you very much, Kate, and thank you. I also extend my thanks to both of you for this conversation. It was great to hear all the very many insights, and I think you can tell I was listening avidly on all the different angles that you were mentioning. And yeah, definitely as well, the point around the getting outside at a time where so many of us are still working from home. You don't even get the commute sunshine, as you might have called it before. So finding that space just to be is very important, I think, for all of us. So lots of great takeaways from you today, Lorraine, and thank you so much for the conversation, Kate. For anyone that hasn't yet signed up, our last client experience webinar of the year is happening tomorrow, and it's on the great subject of innovation and how to create a culture of innovation in your legal function. We've actually got some in-house legal people coming to talk during that session, so it's not just a Denton's perspective, although we do have our Director of Innovation also sharing views and insights as well. So if you're free tomorrow, please do register. We'd love to see you again there. Thanks very much again to everybody for attending today, and hopefully we'll see you all again next year for our future WOWs and our future client experience program. Thanks so much all.